Transport disruption likely. If you have any travel plans, start thinking of alternatives. That's how it's looking. We'll keep you updated. Back to you, George.
Good advice. Thanks, Matt. And it's nearly 6:30. Stay with us. It's time to join the BBC's news teams where you are. Goodbye.
Tonight on BBC London News.
Yeah, look at that. Helicopter, man. Part of the helicopter, mate. That's nuts.
Caught in the falling debris, we hear from the lucky survivors of the helicopter crash.
It really was very frightening. Easily the most frightening thing I've ever experienced or seen in my lifetime.
An investigation into what happened is underway. The crash site in Vauxhall is still sealed off tonight.
And Wandsworth Road remains closed tonight as the search for clues continues.
The helicopter took off from here at Redhill Aerodrome. Tonight, colleagues pay tribute to the pilot who died.
Plus calls for an investigation into flights over London, but the Mayor says it's too early to judge. And the rest of the day's news, including how London has become the European centre for the trade in this addictive drug. Hello and good evening. 2 people dead and 12 injured, the casualties of the crash this morning when a helicopter hit a construction crane in Vauxhall and plunged onto the road below. But eyewitnesses and experts alike are tonight pondering on how fortunate people in the area were that the destruction wasn't worse, given the aircraft laden with fuel fell onto a busy road during this morning's rush hour. Let's go straight to the scene and to our reporter, Alex Bushell. Alex.
Riaz, it was a horrific accident, as you say, taking place at 8 o'clock in the middle of the early morning rush hour. And eyewitnesses have spoken of a fireball, of an explosion, an almighty bang. And they talk about wreckage and debris raining down on them as they themselves had to flee, run for safety. Let me just step away from the camera to show you exactly where the crash took place. Now, that's the tower at St George Wharf on the south bank of the Thames here in Vauxhall. If we zoom in, you should be able to see the crane. Barely visible, the outline there. That's what the helicopter crashed into. Now, the fire brigade this evening has said that a part of the helicopter itself, a rotor, remains wedged actually into the tower itself. Well, tonight our first report comes from Sarah Harris. She's been speaking to those eyewitnesses themselves, and this is what they told her.
Look at that. Helicopter, man. Part of the helicopter, mate. That's nuts.
Minutes after the crash, and people couldn't quite believe what had just happened. When the explosion blasted out, many feared the worst, being so close to the MI6 building. Some left their cars and bikes to run away from the flames.
My bike's under there somewhere.
Got to say I'm very, very lucky.
Mark Carell made it to work on his bike, but with large pieces of burning debris falling around him as he pedalled along Nine Elms Lane, he knows how lucky he is to be alive.
My instinct then was just get out of the way of any falling objects. Anything, of course, that had have hit me would have killed me or anybody around me. So it really was very frightening. Easily the most frightening thing I've ever experienced or seen in my lifetime.
Clive couldn't get back to the building where he works at St George's Wharf Tower. He was about to clock in this morning when he heard a bang and was taken back to July the 7th, 2005, when he was working close to Tavistock Square. He believed he was in the wrong place twice.
I saw debris falling from the building, from the tower, and I became scared, and I basically run to safety. And when I reached the foot of Vauxhall Bridge, I looked back and I saw a lot of black smoke. And obviously it was very scary because it was intense.
But one person who had a clear view of what happened was Richard Sale. He was pushing bikes out onto his showroom forecourt, a stone's throw from Vauxhall Tube, when he noticed a helicopter flying low minutes before it hit the crane.
The rotors literally sheared off the helicopter instantly and took the top of the crane down with them. So you had falling debris from the crane and parts of the helicopter crashing down. You know, you see films, you know, news footage for Afghanistan, things like that. You occasionally see planes shot down and things like that, but not in an urban environment. No, it's very unusual, very surreal. Not the sort of thing you'd want to start your day seeing.
Please clear the area. Please clear the area.
It's been difficult for people living and working in Vauxhall to return to normal. Many who witnessed what happened stayed at the scene of the crash all day, looking on, aware that many more lives could have been lost. Sarah Harris, BBC London News.
Well, Riz, this is the scene actually on the roads here tonight. If you look over my shoulder, you can see the police cordon still in place. Remember, this is a major arterial route into London, the one-way system here at Vauxhall. And we've seen the camera around to the right. You can see it's moving pretty good at the moment, but there was a lot of disruption here, as I say, at one of the major roads into London. But let me talk you through the actual geography of the crash site itself. Now, the helicopter hit a crane on the St George's Tower, as I was saying. Now, that's very near Vauxhall Bridge and also the MI6 building. The St George's Tower is on the south bank of the Thames, and then when the actual helicopter hit the crane, it crashed onto Wandsworth Road, about 500 metres from where I'm standing now. The helicopter itself was travelling from Redhill in Surrey this morning. It was heading over to Elstree in Hertfordshire to pick up a single passenger, but bad weather played a part. Freezing fog, low-level cloud meant that the pilot asked actually to be diverted to the Battersea helipad. It was, as we know, a journey he wasn't able to complete, and tonight there are serious safety concerns, particularly being voiced by residents in Battersea, as our transport correspondent Tom Edwards now explains.
They said it's an helicopter on the floor and there's a car next to it on fire.
In rush hour, close to a major transport interchange, this crash is unprecedented in the capital, and it's already raising questions about safety.
The building was on fire and everything, and it was just madness.
The pilot requested to be diverted to here, the London Battersea heliport from Redhill due to poor weather. It handles 50 flights a day. It was shut this morning. Residents say they've long complained about helicopters getting too close to their flats.
If it can happen in Wandsworth Road, it can happen in Vicarage Crescent. It's too much. It's time it really was looked at seriously.
What is the answer?
Take the heliport somewhere else where there's nobody living near, I think.
These are the main helicopter routes across London. At these points, helicopters have to call into air traffic control. In what's called the Central London Specified Area, single-engine craft must only fly over the Thames. But twin-engine helicopters, like the one that crashed today, can go off these routes if they're given permission. Helicopter flights across the capital are governed by very strict rules and regulations. Last year, the Civil Aviation Authority said there were over 16,000 helicopter flights across the capital. But those who live next to these very busy main helicopter routes, like the Thames, say that's far too many. There's also lots of building work along the Thames. The Air Traffic Service had published a warning to pilots about the crane on the tower that was hit. Locals say they had reported a lack of warning lights on the crane to the police, although it's unclear if that was a factor this morning.
The brightest thing on the crane was the building company's illuminated sign hanging on the back of it, and that was what drew my attention to the fact there wasn't the usual warning light.
There are now calls for a review of helicopter use in the capital and much stricter controls.
At some stage we do need to look at whether now, with the changing skyline of London, we need to look much more closely at where and how and why helicopters fly throughout our central city.
I think the point she makes about the rules for helicopter flights and indeed other flights over our capital city, I'm sure they will be looked at as part of the investigations that will take place. She's right that that's not an issue for today, but inevitably it's something that has to be carefully looked at.
The industry says helicopter travel is safe. They will want a proportionate response. But this incident could have been much, much worse. And that's bound to increase the calls for more regulation of the capital's skies. Tom Edwards, BBC London News.
So what of those safety concerns? Well, early this afternoon I was actually able to speak to the mayor who came down to the site to have a look himself. This is what he told me.
It is very rare indeed that you have a aircraft incident of this kind in central London. I can't remember one in my lifetime. There will be questions that people will want answered about lights on cranes, about the visibility of tall buildings. All that kind of thing is a legitimate subject for the Air Accident Investigation Department.
There is a question that you can answer now, which is the local MP's request for a review into air traffic control. She's concerned that with so many tall buildings turning up now in London, more needs to be done to actually review and measure that. The PM himself seemed to endorse that there would be a review now. Would you welcome that?
It is a bit too early to draw conclusions. We'll want to look at the way we illuminate tall buildings, the way that cranes are illuminated, all that kind of thing, to make sure that nothing went wrong in this case and to make sure that nothing goes wrong in the future. It's important not to be glib when, after all, there are families mourning the loss of loved ones today, but the fact is it's perfectly obvious if you go and look at the site that it could have been much worse, and you only have to imagine what it could have been like if that helicopter had collided with a full double-decker bus or indeed a heavily populated building.
And on that note, it's not just a double-decker bus that would have been packed with commuters travelling through here at 8 o'clock. Those are train tracks, a train passing through, and there would have been packed commuter trains coming through here at that time as well. Nonetheless, tonight we are mourning the loss of 2 people killed in this accident, a pilot and a bystander on the ground, in an accident the like of which we've not seen in living memory.
From Vauxhall, Alex, thank you. As Alex said, the helicopter was en route from Redhill Aerodrome in Surrey. Carl Mercer is there for us tonight. And Carl, what more do we know about the pilot?
Well, we're told that Captain Pete Barnes was one of the most experienced helicopter pilots in the country. He'd been flying for 25 years, had something like 10,500 flying hours under his belt. He left here at 7:35, as Alex was saying earlier, on his way to Elstree Aerodrome, but at 8 o'clock was diverted to Battersea when, of course, the accident happened. Now, we've spoken to some of his colleagues up at Elstree this afternoon. They've described him as totally professional and a great bloke. And other pilots have been going onto online forums this afternoon, one describing him as one of the nicest guys you would ever want to work with, another adding he was one of the most respected pilots around and a top bloke. Sentiments very much echoed here at Redhill this afternoon.
Rotomotion have been a well-established operator at the aerodrome for many years, and they're well respected, and it's come as a huge shock to everyone on the aerodrome today, and it's a very sad feeling across the entire aerodrome.
And Pete Barnes was also well known in the film industry, Carl.
Yeah, that's right. He did a lot of film and TV work. He worked on Hollywood movies, Bond films, things like Saving Private Ryan. He'd also worked on the BBC's award-winning Coast documentary. He was also involved in the advertising world. I think we can see a clip of a Rimmel advert that he was working on, Kate Moss getting into a helicopter. That helicopter was flown by Captain Pete Barnes. As well as that, he worked on the London 2012 Olympics. He'd also done an awful lot of charity work. He was involved in the air ambulance, and back in 2004 won an Outstanding Bravery Award for taking part in a rescue up in the north of England.
Carl, thank you very much. And later on in the programme, we'll put some of the questions raised today to an aviation expert. Turning now to some of the day's other news. The first senior fire officer on the scene of a tower block fire in Camberwell in which 6 people died didn't know the layout of the building or the best way to get people out safely. He was giving evidence at the inquest into the deaths in 2009. The court also heard for the first time from the woman in whose flat the fire started. Our special correspondent Kurt Barling has more.
Today it became clear that the first fire crews were on site at Lakanal House within minutes of getting their first emergency call-out at 4:21 on the 3rd of July. The court was told that fire crew manager Barry Willett followed procedure in getting initial firefighters deployed and setting up to tackle the fire. The complexity of the building layout, though, he was not familiar with. In particular, he was unaware that the balconies seen here were fire-secure escape routes, nor that the white doors at the end were fire doors leading to a central secure staircase. In evidence, Mr. Willett said although firefighters knew almost immediately that resident Catherine Hickman was trapped in flat 79, those on the ground had no information on how to get to it or from it safely. Tragically, she died nearly 30 minutes after firefighters had arrived on the scene. Also today, for the first time, the person in whose flat the fire started recalled how she'd been taken by surprise when she saw flames in the bedroom of the flat she'd only just moved into. She fled to safety with the baby she was looking after along the escape balcony whilst calling 999. She didn't speak to any firefighters on the ground. An inquest is supposed to be a humane process. And in a dignified intervention today, 2 of the families who lost their loved ones at Lakanal told the woman in whose flat the fire started she shouldn't feel guilty. They said the fire could have started literally anywhere. Kurt Barling, BBC London News.
The Mayor's been facing questions from the London Assembly on his plan to save £500 million from the Met Police budget. Our political editor Tim Donovan watched the meeting and joins us now. And these are controversial proposals, aren't they, Tim?
Yes, and this is the first time the Mayor has explained, defended these proposals before the Assembly. And he insists that although they are forced upon him by the financial situation, they can lead to better policing. Now, the opposition are just not prepared to believe that, and they say that what is happening is a dismantling of a safer neighbourhood system on which the public has come to depend. And there was some criticism and some confusion today because while the Met and the plans themselves say that the current model of 6 uniformed officers in every local area will be reduced to 2, he said, or he refused to accept today that that would happen.
Can you confirm that there will only be 1 PC and 1 PCSO dedicated to wards, as outlined in your police and crime plan, Mr. Mayor?
It will depend on each ward and on the dispositions that the Borough Commander makes.
Serious concerns raised about the closure of police stations.
Yes, and the Commissioner, Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe, says he's content to see 60 counters or so go because he doesn't think they're used that much. And by their closure, he can free up 300 police officers to do more valuable work. But he had to concede today that there were no plans in place yet with other organisations to station officers there once the stations were closed.
They aren't agreed in principle. I think, as I said already, is that the things that are more certain are the things for which we're fully in control. The things which we have to work in partnership with others, we will have to take time to work with people.
So the upshot of this, Riz, is that the Liberal Democrats, say that this will decimate safer neighbourhood policing. Labour said today that the Mayor hasn't got a clue about the impact, but he is insistent that from a difficult situation, he can deliver policing here which cuts crime and is reassuring.
Tim, thank you. Our political editor, Tim Donovan at City Hall. It's just been banned in the Netherlands, and from next week it could also be made illegal here. The drug khat, a plant grown in Africa, is popular among Somali communities in the capital. Campaigners against the herbal high say it causes mental health problems and family breakdown. As our Home Affairs correspondent Guy Smith reports, London has become one of the main centres for distributing it around the world.
A warehouse near Heathrow. It's early morning and the first consignment has just arrived. 4 flights a week from Nairobi bring in khat, a herbal high that's currently legal in the UK. These boxes are just some of the 3,000 tonnes of the plant flown in every year and then distributed across London and the UK. Business is booming.
It's about 6,000 boxes altogether.
And you're bringing in how many?
3,000 a week.
Khat is a shrub grown in the Horn of Africa. Its leaves are mainly chewed. You have to eat it within 24 hours, 48 hours? Yes. This warehouse worker agreed to talk and tell me why he liked it.
There's some drugs in there, like it's called amphetamine. It makes me work hard, it makes me, think wise, it makes me talkative.
But Holland banned khat last week. It's also illegal in America, Canada and many other European countries, but not in Britain. If khat is banned here in the UK, then legitimate businesses like this will be forced to close. But the demand will still be there, and people will find another way of getting hold of it. And that would mean smuggling it in. This is a mafresh in East London, a meeting place for Somali men and somewhere to chew khat. As important socially as the pub is to mainstream society. But khat is cheaper than alcohol, This bundle costs £3 and can last the night.
Where there is a place of chewing, you'll never find people fighting. What they do, they just sit down and chill.
So he's firmly against a ban.
Those who are much addicted, I think banning it will drive them on other dangerous drugs.
It's destroying our communities. There are deaths, there are mental sicknesses due to cut use.
Abuka Awali is a former addict. Now, though, one of the most vocal campaigners lobbying the government to outlaw it.
And I would say this to British government. In one hand, you are promoting integration and how each individual should come forward and be part of this society. In other hand, you are saying we allow cut because it's only affecting small minority of community. It doesn't make sense. It's a clear discrimination.
This woman's brother has been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, something she believes has been caused by him using the drug.
He became suddenly really someone who was really lively and really funny and sort of playful, became really moody and aggressive and kind of closed in and didn't want to go out, didn't want to socialise.
Yet there's still very little evidence linking the stimulant to physical or mental health problems. And some think a ban would be an overreaction.
I think that the Somali community and the Ethiopian community is already suffering from sufficient discriminations and difficulties in this country. The idea of now introducing a ban on its favourite substance, which would introduce stop and search by the police, would further raise tensions between the community and the police.
The government has commissioned a review of CAT. Next week, a report is expected on whether it will be banned or indeed regulated. Guy Smith, BBC London News.
Let's return now to the main news tonight and the helicopter crash in Vauxhall which killed the pilot and one other person. It hit a crane on a building under construction during this morning's rush hour. Well, we can talk now to aviation journalist and pilot David Learmount. Good evening to you. As a hugely experienced pilot, we heard about him earlier in the programme, we know that he would have taken the weather into account. In your view, was that the key issue?
Weather, I think, will turn out to be the key issue, and specifically visibility. Yes, a very, very experienced pilot would have known that he was going to be flying in marginal conditions. And the trouble is that when you fly in marginal conditions, it only needs a little dip in what you were expecting, and you're pretty much trapped. If the cloud base is slightly lower than you expected it to be, if you run into a fog patch, just like you can in a car on a motorway. You can know it might happen, but then it suddenly does. But when you've got 3 dimensions to think about and not much space in any direction, that's difficult.
Now, we've heard from the Civil Aviation Authority this evening confirming that the warning lights on tall structures only need to be turned on at night and not during bad weather in daylight hours. Do you think that should be changed?
I think the best idea, fine, have a warning light, a red light, but as a matter of fact, you very often see the structure before you see the red light. One of the best things you can possibly do is to floodlight the structure downwards.
And how likely is something like that to happen?
Well, they already use techniques like that for highlighting very tall buildings which are close to major airports. It's better than putting lights on the buildings.
Now, questions have been raised by the local MP that given the changing skyline of London, should the rules for helicopter flights and the numbers of them be looked at? We know that the Prime Minister has said in the future they should be. What's your take on that?
I don't think the rules need to get any stricter. Your reporters have already given a very good idea of how very strict the rules already are. What you really have to do is to apply them and, of course, to take account of the changing skyline. It's like, suddenly the whole terrain is different. I think people have got to be terribly strict about having very good visibility, because the only way that you avoid big buildings is by seeing them. OK,
David Learmount, thank you very much indeed for your views. Let's go straight to Alex Bushell again. Plenty of thoughts, Alex, about what happened. What are you hearing there on the ground?
Well, Riz, in the last few minutes, I understand that the black box, that's the flight recorder on board itself, has been recovered. That's coming from well-placed police sources within the Met. We know that air accident investigators are on site. They'll be looking themselves to find an explanation as to this tragic accident. They'll no doubt be reviewing the conversation between the pilot and air traffic control at Heathrow, particularly in the moments before the crash itself. They will also hope to, as quickly as possible, recover the wreckage from behind me, take it back to their base in Farnborough and look for any evidence, clues of a mechanical failure. What we know tonight, though, for sure is it won't take days, it won't take weeks. They say it will take months before they can report back.
Alex, thank you for that update. Well, the crash has caused all sorts of travel problems throughout the day. The latest this evening that we have is that Wandsworth Road will stay closed in both directions between Vauxhall Cross and Queenstown Road in Battersea until next week at least for accident investigation work. And we can see here that the south side of Vauxhall Bridge is open, although it's difficult for buses to access Vauxhall Bus Station. 9 routes are on diversion and Vauxhall Tube Station and the train station are both open. Keep up to date, of course, on our website. Let's go to Pete now for a look at the weather. Hello.
Thanks very much, Riz. Looks like we're set to suffer some even more challenging wintry weather through the rest of this week. We'll get some more of that freezing fog, and then it looks like we're going to get some disruptive snow on Friday to take us into the weekend. The Met Office has already issued some yellow weather warnings. These are the Be Aware weather warnings for both snow and ice. So it's on its way. As far as the current weather's concerned, the next 12 hours or so, it's just going to get colder. These were the minimum temperatures last night, -2 to -7 Celsius. Tonight, we're looking at a range of -4 to -9 Celsius. If you're heading off to the Emirates this evening, wrap up very warm. The temperature dropping to -2 during that game. You can listen to our commentary on radio and online. So lots of blue on the weather map again tonight. That ghostly looking fog beginning to develop. I think we're going to have more of that freezing fog tonight, more than we had last night. And that means it's going to take a little while longer to start to thin and lift into low cloud. But eventually we'll see some winter sunshine tomorrow afternoon. Maximum temperatures around about +2 Celsius. Don't think freezing fog will be a big problem tomorrow night because the breeze will be freshening. And if I just move out of the way, here's the snow starting to move in from the west. There's going to be quite a lot of it around by Friday morning. Now, by Friday afternoon, it will start to spread across the London area. Some of us could see something like 10 centimetres, 4 inches of snow before it turns to rain and it turns less cold over the weekend. You might want to keep an eye on the forecast over the next few days. Riz.
We will, Peter, thank you. A reminder of tonight's main news. A helicopter has crashed in central London after colliding with a crane, killing the pilot and 1 other person. 12 others were injured. The accident happened during this morning's rush hour in Vauxhall. And the pilot has been named as Peter Barnes. He was an experienced flyer who'd worked on James Bond films and TV adverts. More on that story on the BBC News channel and, of course, on our website. We'll be back with the latest for you during the 10 o'clock news from all of us on the team. Have a very good evening. Bye-bye.
Drama on The One Show next with guests Julian Fellows and Nina Wadia. Tackling the subjects that matter to you, Adrian Goldberg leads 5 Live Investigates, as well as taking on listeners' campaigns and consumer issues on Sunday mornings from 11. Or catch up on previous episodes via the 5 Live website and on Radio iPlayer.
Brighten up your Saturday nights with a brand new talent show. 24 ordinary people with extraordinary minds battle it out in the ultimate challenge. Testing beyond facts and figures, our contestants will need to engage every part of their brain, from intuition to emotional intelligence. Is that a real smile or is that fake? Who will shine as Britain's brightest?
Continue Saturday at 6:45 on BBC One and catch up on BBC iPlayer.
Meet the woman who cares more about her pets than her kitchen. You won't want to dine round at hers anytime soon. Food Inspectors, tonight at 8. First on BBC One, we're safe in the company of Alex and Matt.
Hello and welcome to The One Show with Alex Joe.
And Matt Baker. Now, we're in esteemed company tonight.
Oh, yes,
we are loading it up with a Downton peer of the realm and a Walford lady-in-waiting.
So we've booked ourselves a real-life butler. Here we go. Colin, would you do the honours for us, please?
Please welcome Lord Fellows of West Stafford and Miss Nina Wadia of the Telly. How are you? How do we get ourselves into these things?
How wonderful that you're joining us tonight. Thank you very much. I don't need to run off and go and get the canapes or something like that, but anyway.
It would be nice if we had some canapes on the coffee table, wouldn't it? Now, Julian, you've clearly met Colin before, though, haven't you?
Colin is a very important part of Highclere. He is the butler at Highclere.
Oh.
A very, very, very big job.
Yes.
And so, yes, I have indeed come across him before.
Mm-hmm. And Nina, as we'll be talking about tonight, you've left, or leaving,
Yes,
EastEnders now.
yeah,
Is it, would a period drama suit next, do you reckon?
What do you reckon?
Yeah, have you brought your CV? Have you brought your CV? Let's cut to the
I've
chase.
got my CV, I've got my show reel.
I was thinking of doing something contemporary. What a pity.
Oh, lovely.
Great. Now, in just a few minutes, we've also got an exclusive look behind the scenes of the real Downton Abbey, as you mentioned,
Yep.
Highclere Castle, with their butler Colin. Secret doors and all.
Yes, with somebody else very special who we'll meet very shortly. But first, Winter Watch continues on BBC Two a little bit later, and through the power of this very special remote control, we can access... You're going to love this, Nina. Well, actually, you're probably not going to love this, as we'll find out. But we can access their live cameras. Right, watch. There we go. So there we are. So there we Now, these are two very young beavers. These are known as kits. And we think that... Oh, yes, well, there you go. Look, we've seen that they may wake up. You can see one is actually, showing him in all its glory at the moment.
You can always kick the box. That would wake them up.
Well,
Julian, they're not in a box. Now, you're not a big fan of animals, Nina, are you?
No, anything with more than 2 legs. No, not really.
Not even baby beavers.
Well, actually, I've got to say that is a little bit cute.
Yes.
Yeah. Though I am in favour of shaking the box as well, I'm afraid.
Well, you'll be pleased to know that we're going to be keeping an eye on them throughout the night then. And,
you can't wait forever, can you?
No.
And we'll see what else turns up, of
We
course,
will.
obviously, as we go. But, yes, thanks
Now-
for making the people.
Now, whatever you're having for your tea tonight, we are guessing, if you've seen the news, that it's not burgers.
Yes, well, our very own food inspector, Matt Allwright, went to see what people think about having horse meat in their burgers, and he got some surprising results.
If you found out that you'd eaten a burger that had horse meat in it, what would your reaction be to that? Would it be revulsion? Or?
Initial shock, then I'd probably wonder, how did that taste?
If they've got horse meat in there, also, I mean, they were saying that some of the products which were beef burgers had pork in them as well. And I'm not a pork eater, so that would concern me as well.
When they put it on the shelf, they have to tell the customers believe them.
I have eaten, not a horse, I have eaten horse meat.
And why did you find that acceptable?
For the same reason I find eating cows, lambs, and all the other animals acceptable. It's a great source of protein.
I don't agree with eating horses, to be honest. I think it's just they're quite a nice animal. It's people have a connection with horses like you do dogs. You see what I mean? Whether it's a cow, you don't